Hello, welcome to Hope Ready. I'm your host, Dr. Ellen. As we get closer to the November election, I've been thinking more and more about what it means to have discussions that are framed in dignity, respect, and love. Thoughts on politics right now are so divisive. And so how do we, as members of the Hope community, lean into discussions and disagree well? With me today is Dr. Dee Johnston, Professor of Communication. Dr. Johnston has expertise in interpersonal communication, and so I thought it was about time that we invite her on to ask her for some great advice. So thanks for joining me, first of all, Dr. Johnston, and just what advice do you have for us when we engage with people with whom we disagree?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I think it's a good thing that we have conversations and that we talk to each other about our beliefs and about our values and about our political positions, because it's really important. We can learn from each other. We can grow from each other by understanding other people's perspectives and the experiences that other people have had that have led them to believe perhaps something differently than what we believe. So I encourage sometimes we want to avoid those conversations because they're difficult, but I encourage us all to engage in those conversations, lean into those conversations. But I think there's some guidelines that we can think about that will help us to have better, more productive, more conversations filled with grace and mercy for each other in this very, very difficult time. There's perhaps been no other time in our lifetime when we felt that the country has been quite so politically polarized to the extent that it is now, and that people hold these values, their core values, central to them. And it's very threatening when somebody is challenging your core values. So a couple of things to keep in mind. One is that to consider your emotional state. So the first step, I think, before you engage in a conversation is to do some check-in on your emotions. Where am I right now? What am I feeling before you start the conversation? What we want to do is get to a place of emotional moderation, this middle ground on our emotions before we engage in a difficult conversation. So when we check in, we realize that sometimes we can have hyper emotional states. We're agitated, we're frustrated, we're angry. And that's a hyper, H-Y-P-E-R, emotional state. That's not a good place to have a conversation, a difficult conversation. On the opposite end, we can find ourselves in a hypo emotional state, H-Y-P-O, which is below. That's when we're withdrawn. We may be depressed. We may be sad. We may be melancholy and drawing into ourselves. That's also probably not the best position to be in when engaging in an emotional conversation. So we check in with ourselves. Where am I? What am I feeling? And how do I get myself back into that middle ground of emotional regulation, emotional moderation? Some things that we can do. One is to use our resources and our memory and think of positive things, that special place even that you have in your mind. For me, it's the beach and a hammock and the sun is shining and I'm feeling the warmth on my body. But that's a way to help my body and my physiological sensations come back to that middle ground for emotional regulation. Another thing that we can do is think about the other person who we want to engage in conversation, and think about that person as a child of God. That is God's precious child before us, and that changes our response and helps moderate our emotions, where we may have started with being very angry and frustrated and go, okay, I've got to check this. I can bring it back into this ground. Once I start seeing that person as a child of God, I look at them differently, and then I can engage. So that's the first step. The second step is to think about how you can validate another person, even if you disagree with them. So it's very easy to validate somebody we agree with. Wow, Ellen, that was a great point. Ellen, I love your show. This is a great idea, especially this semester when we're all confined under unusual circumstances. This is a great way to build community. So I can validate someone with whom I agree with very easily. But oh boy, somebody I disagree with, how on earth do I do that? Well, first off, be authentic to yourself and your own positions. You don't have to sell out your position or your values by saying, oh yeah, I hear you, I agree with you, yeah, that's a good point. If I don't think that way, I shouldn't be saying those things. But I can validate another person as a person, that they're a good person, even if I disagree with their position, their beliefs, or their values. I might, for example, say, wow, you're really passionate about your position on this issue about the upcoming election. Or, my goodness, are you knowledgeable about the Supreme Court and about how people go through the process of being appointed to the Supreme Court? You have a lot of knowledge on that. So I'm validating the person, even though I might disagree with their position. And it's very, very important, and particularly in the kind of community that we have at Hope College, that we validate the person. We validate people as individuals and as precious people that we care about and we value tremendously. And as part of that, to remember that a person is not essentialized to their political position. They are much more than that. They are a son or a daughter. They're a friend. They're a student. They have many, many roles. They have many different values. They have many different perspectives on many different issues. And to remember the totality of a person rather than just essentializing that person as a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter, and that's all that they are. It's not. So we think of them, not essentializing them, validating who they are as people, what they're passionate about, what they care about. Those are important things. And then we can still challenge or disagree with a person's position, their value, their belief. So that third suggestion that I have, and this is the final one, so it's not to load people with too many things to keep in mind. So regulate emotions, find yourself in that emotional moderate ground. Think about how to validate the person as a person, and then think about what questions you can ask. So rather than saying, I think this and I want you to believe that and argue and I'm going to debate you and I'm going to tear down your position, go into this conversation with curiosity, with humility, with how can I understand what you believe? How can I understand it better? Don't assume that we know another person's beliefs or that we know why they believe what they believe, because we often don't. So again, we essentialize. They're a supporter of that candidate that is a person I don't care for, and so they must think this, they must value that, they are this type of bad, evil person. But put those assumptions aside and ask questions. What experiences have you had that have led you to these beliefs that you hold on immigration or abortion or the critical issues of our day, climate change, sustainability? What things have you experienced that have led you to come to the conclusion that you've come to? So go in with curiosity, asking for clarity, looking for understanding. Now, questions can be used in a negative way. So be careful that you're not using a question in order, we call it the gotcha question, that I'm just asking you a question to set you up so I can slap you down again. So that's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for questions for understanding. I really sincerely, truthfully want to understand your perspective and your position. I don't have to agree with it, but I can seek to understand it. So again, not selling out your own personal beliefs, but seeking clarity and understanding from somebody that you don't agree with. And that's a way that we grow. We grow intellectually, we grow emotionally, we grow relationally by actually leaning into these difficult conversations and seeking to understand somebody who we don't understand their position.
Those are great tips, such good advice. I just want to say thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. And I hope that we can all carry your ideas with us to regulate our emotions, to validate authentically, and to stop and be curious and ask questions instead of having to have the last word or the right word in our discussions with the people of our community. So I hope that we will all move forward, maybe with a collective deep breath as we get closer to the election, and give dignity and show respect and live love so that we can all continue to be hope ready.
Yes,
Thank you.
indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellen. This was wonderful. Great fun to be with you today.
Thanks so much for joining me.